Black culture is a subset of American culture. It is the reaction to a specific population's place within the broad geographic area that you call America, in the sort of like the philosophical is that encompasses, for lack of a better term. So
let's drill down there if you don't mind, because I have a 15-minute video of me in Costa Rica arguing with a Bahamian, a Haitian, a Jamaican, and a Costa Rican, all of us of African descent, arguing about that exact thing, about African American, Black American culture, and this belief that there's no such thing as Black culture. But then you put it even better, that not only is there such a thing as Black culture, but that Black culture is inseparable from American culture and the effects that American culture has had on Black people. And I had to explain to them that, you know what, the struggle, the fight, civil rights, Black Lives Matter, that is our culture, because every bit of our existence has been cast by the subjugation that we have been subject to for the last however many hundreds of years. That becomes a part of our DNA. That becomes a part of our culture. That becomes a part of our religious institutions. And then what happens is the need to purge that from our culture and to placate us to the point where we try to find some identity that's not connected to that existence, to that Blackness. And I think that's one of the most powerful tools that can be found. The best example I have, you could think of it in terms of, let's say, Black conservatives who try to completely disconnect themselves from the civil rights fight, right? They don't disconnect themselves from civil rights. They disconnect themselves from thinking that there's anything to fight for now, right? But then the more transparent version to me is the difference between the Black liberation movement inside of the Black church, the liberation theology in the Black church, and the prosperity gospel, where Black liberation theology in church was 100% about overthrowing institutions of white supremacy, overthrowing the oppressive nature of capitalism in our neighborhoods, 100% about undoing basically whatever Pharaoh had done to the Israelites. Black theology, Black liberation theology was 100% about making sure that we, the children of Israel, were set free from the bondage of Pharaoh, compared to this new version of religion, which is completely separated from the historical Black culture, which is the prosperity gospel, which is completely forget about the historical aspects of how we got here. Let's just talk about how we can name it and claim it, have it and grab it. So I don't speak to that. Just want to throw that out there. Go.
I think Brandon can speak to this better than me, but I think the phenomena of culture is that culture is based on your environment, right? Like we were saying before, the Africans worship what they saw, right? African people worship what they saw. They worship the trees, they worship the sky, they worship the animals, they worship something that they could touch within their environment, right? And we as African Americans, our current culture, for lack of a better word, is a direct reaction to the environment which we find ourselves in, through no fault of our own, I might add. Right. So what we see right now is a reaction to social and economic pressures. Like, for instance, if these same economic pressures, you see the same results all over the world. Right. You see them in the favelas of Rio. You see them in the tower blocks of London. You see them in Hong Kong. You see them all over the world. The same reaction to the same social and economic pressures. So it's not us. Right. It's how human beings react. We have to take a look at the external pressures that cause this. And that's my opinion. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I want to address what Ben said just really quickly, but what you said really is going to really set it up. Is that ideology? This is going to be my controversial statement of the evening. Ideology.
Only one to this time.
Ideology, for the most part, is secondary to the environment that ideology.
Absolutely.
The contents of that ideology the specifics of an ideology. What you're talking about: Christianity, Islam, Blackness, for lack of a better word. So with identity and ideology is always a subset to, is always it's always a consequence. The specifics of an ideology or an identity or a group is always a consequence of the environment that ideology or group or identity arises in. So when you talk about the difference between prosperity Christianity, for lack of a better word, and liberation theology Christianity, you're talking about Christianity that arose in two very different contexts. The context in which prosperity, that this notion of money and monetary wealth being equal to your sort of Christian value, your morality, arose in Europe as capitalism rose, and liberation theology arose in various parts of the world as a reaction to colonization, as a reaction to
internal
to
and external,
the encroachment of white Westerners, white Europeans, white United States colonizers.
The oppressor, brother.
Encroachment of the oppressor. And so you have two different Christianities because you have two different environments that the sort of Christianity arose inside of. I mean, arose within. And I think that's one of the big takeaways we should take away from tonight is that religion is great. Whatever. So is capitalism. So is all these other ideologies. So is feminism. So is anti-racism. But the specifics of that ideology are always going to be the result of whatever environment that person or that ideology arose in. That is why you can have rich white feminism that is almost indistinguishable from white supremacy because largely those two things arose in the same kind of environment. If that makes sense, there's the same economic realities, the same material realities affecting the formation of that ideology in that person. And to speak to the video that Ben brought up about the Jamaican and the Haitians arguing and about the black culture.
I didn't put it up. Because I didn't want to. It was close friends, and we got heated because they didn't see that we had a culture. But go ahead.
Well, okay, so there is black culture as prescribed by white America, and then there are the black cultures that black people are able to divide themselves into by nature of a variety of factors, where they came from, how dark their skin is, their education level, and this is because of racism. And the fact that we largely group ourselves as a society based on the color of our skin. So we create two different groups, white people and black people. That's the two groups that our society recognizes. And if you're not within one of those groups, you largely view the other group as being completely homogenous. If you ask a white person if there's any difference between a Haitian and a Jamaican in terms of blackness, a racist white person, they'll probably say, no, whatever. But we all know that
island's an island,
hierarchy in the black community. There's a hierarchy within the overall black culture that groups people based on where they were born. And that there is a lot of internal strife between different types of blackness. At the same time, if you ask me like the difference between an Italian and Grecian, or not Grecian, but an Italian and a Czechoslovakian and all the other things, I would be at a loss. I mean, I know the difference, obviously, but I'm trying to make that comparison. That
the average person,
as black people, we also view the white community in ways as being kind of homogenous in ethnic terms. If that makes sense.
Let me. But here's a question to that point, right? You actually kind of. Here's the problem, and we have to find a solution. The problem is that they're trying to usher blackness in America into this whitewashed, for lack of a better word, this homogenized version of American identity that is indistinguishable from whiteness, right? Just like whiteness is almost a wash. I think they're white people know their culture. They'll know where they're from, but then some won't even know the difference. Some it's almost just a real homogenized group in America, and we're getting more so. If you go back to America 100 years ago, I mean, the Irish versus the Italian was just as tough as black versus white, but they evolved into this, or I don't know if it's evolution or devolution, right? But they moved into this place of a homogenous group that they all started to enjoy some of the same benefits of America. They're trying to usher, that's what they want for black people. They want us to not have a separate identity that clings to our history, to our culture. They want us to just be homogenized and just become what they are. But the problem is that twofold. One, we don't enjoy the benefits that they get by virtue of their skin color in the United States of America. And we could argue about that all day long with them, but the reality of it is, when we get stopped, it's a totally different experience than when someone who's white gets stopped by the police. So they want us to become homogenized without giving us the opportunity or even recognizing that there is a difference between our experiences here. And my question is, how do we not only avoid that, right? I think it's pretty easy to avoid that, but where do we go from here? Because there are constant pressures of assimilation, and we're being assimilated unequally.